Hello, everyone. Yfat, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
So it's a tough act to follow, Mr. El Shirawi, but we're going to give it a go. We're talking how to make tech collaborations happen, a 101 beginner's guide. Maybe let's start with just explaining a bit, briefly, to people who might not be familiar, what it is that Leumi Tech does in Israel and globally, and specifically here.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. It is a tough act after all speakers this morning. So Leumi Tech is the banking arm of Bank Leumi that's helping technology companies be founded and follow them and help them financially throughout their growth. And one of the most important things for us is to help them grow, and growing means going international. And just like we're helping them expand into the United States, and we have multiple businesses that we're running in the States, as well as to Europe, we think that this region is definitely a very important region for technology companies in Israel. And hence we're here, we're starting to learn or advancing and learning the opportunities here. And we would like to be those who help our clients come and do business here.
Well, we're talking about 2 or 3 months after the initial signing of the accords. Now, you've been here before. I know you led a delegation a couple of weeks ago. But what's changed? What's changed in the last 3 months that you can tell?
So the first thing that changed is that there's 22 billion more barrels of oil since we last visited. But putting that aside, I think that the most impressive thing that we have learned since our first, at least my visit here, or our visit here, is that the UAE has been very diligent in understanding that oil is nice to have, and there is a lot of it now here, but it's not going to be here forever, and it's not necessarily the only thing that a nation can rely on. And I think that, and we've heard it from all the speakers before, the diversification away from oil has been very successful, and Sultan has mentioned in Dubai it's less than 2%. So what is very big focus here is to make the country a digital knowledge country, make the economy grow with things that are not dependent on oil at all. And obviously technology is a very important ignition engine to allow any nation, obviously UAE, Israel as well, but many other nations around the world, to expand and to bring talent and make GDP growth faster than all the economies.
So if we can say that technology or innovation is Israel's oil, so to speak, many people here in the room are looking for investments, looking to raise capital, but what would you say are other types of collaboration beyond just that people here can benefit from?
I think it's a good question because at least in the last 3 months, my opinion has changed, and I think many Israelis' opinions have changed. I think that we initially, without knowing very much, UAE, at least from first-hand experience, we thought there is a lot of money, and there's going to be mainly collaborations around money flowing from the UAE to Israeli tech companies. I think that in the last 3 months, and I can testify by my own experience and people that I work with closelly's experience, is that this is definitely not going to be the prevailing situation. I think that what we've heard this morning, and we're hearing it from everybody we speak to, is that the Emirati people and economy are very interested in doing things with Israel, but it has to be a very mutual business. It has to be both, it has to go both ways. Money flows, IP flows, intellectual property, and other things need to go both ways. I think that the local businesses or the local government and business people would like to do mutual businesses with Israeli tech companies, not necessarily only invest and get financial return. The importance here, and the government is pushing it very much, is to make productivity higher here and have a high growth GDP. And to do that, you have to have a very strong base of technology companies and centers that are located here. Obviously, this can also be a hub for expansion of Israeli tech selling into regions of the world that we have not sold yet, at least not formally. So I think that there's a lot of mutual interest. I'll give you a few examples. Obviously, and we heard it before, the food security, or what is called here food safety, which is the government's attempt to reduce the dependency on oil importing. They're importing here 90% of their food, and living in places where they don't have, they have some enemies around them, very similar to us. A nation needs to be independent of that situation. So they really want to grow food. Growing food or agriculture here is challenging. We know this from regions in Israel that are very similar. When you have 45, 49 degrees in the shade, you need to have very sophisticated agriculture technologies, and there is a bunch of those who we have been doing in Israel, in the Arava, at least is as warm as here, in a few days a year. So I think that things like food, like meat without growing cows, because it's tough to grow cows here. So making meat from tissue as opposed to a real cow, or making milk without cows. All these things are things that Israel is good at and is doing already, and there's obviously an already interest from investors and partners here to do things together.
So when we're talking about projects that are ongoing, what's the best way, in your opinion, to begin that process? So you've been here before, you've had some experience in developing it. If it was to give a 101 course, what would be at the top of the syllabus?
So I think that, at least on the Israeli side, everybody here has gone through us opening businesses to other regions. So for example, China that opened up to us, or Japan, and usually it took a few years for us to start to get this engine going and to get to know who's doing business, how you do business. What is happening here is really it's a speedy process. I think that we're making progress here 10 times faster than, learning the areas compared to how we learned China, which is great. I think that the most important difference from what I've seen in other places in the world is that there are actual organizations here whose main job is to make collaborations and open the area to international business people. So, for example, there's a department, there's a group called Abu Dhabi Investment Office, and not only are they opening their arms to allow Israelis to ask the questions and help them navigate through the business here, they actually have a Hebrew website. And for those of you in Israel, you may have encountered even notes in Hebrew on on Israeli newspapers. They're really opening, the Emiratis are opening their doors and are willing to help, because it's not necessarily what you see is what you get. It's a new economy for us, but there are a lot of people who want to help it be very smooth and relatively very fast.
And Leumi Tech being one of them, of course.
Of course.
Now, when we know the government signed the agreement, they've done the political process, but right now, is there still a role for government to nurture and enrich the relationship, or is it time for government to back off and business to do their thing?
I think that both governments' main role is to make economic relationship easy. So I think governments need to make sure that there's infrastructure, the right infrastructure in place, the right agreements in place, and make it very easy in terms of the bureaucracy, and allow the business people to make sure that we optimize, everything we can do business-wise without having to deal with all kinds of difficulties that the governments can solve, which they're working on solving as we speak.
Right, and last question, because the timer's running. Israel and the United Arab Emirates, part of a global community, sharing same threats. So, we've seen it now with COVID, and we're seeing it long-term with climate change. Is there a way for the two countries, or the two business communities, to cooperate on that level?
On a global level? Sure. I think that, like I said before, I think that the role of the UAE in the eyes of Israel is one, a very strong hub to do business with and business through with, meaning if we're able to grow mutual businesses, JVs between us, I think that it opens by definition the entire world to be an available market for us, and you know, and it looks like it's already starting to happen, so I'm very optimistic.
We all are. Yfat, Oron, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.